This guy here is really important, Zecharia Sitchin. Fortunately, he's passed now, but he translated a lot of the text, Book of Enoch, etc. He's a great linguistic. Now, a lot of debunkers say he was working as a Freemason and he was deliberately putting out misinformation. Unfortunately, those people that debunk him don't use logic, because anyone else can translate those texts as well. You see, that's where their idea falls down. And they did. Other people have translated those texts, and they pretty much agree with Zecharia Sitchin. So he might have been allowed to do this by the Freemasons, or he was going against them. Either way, his information seems to be correct. Now, he's wrote a series of books which you might find interesting. Now, around some point while the Anunnaki were here, the grey aliens arrived, and there's various proof of that in carvings and things, and I'll talk more in the next episode. Hi everyone, I've been asked a lot for YouTube videos, putting these on YouTube because they want to watch them in one long whole go. So I've put them on in different types. So I've got, for example, 1 to 5, 6 to 10 and so on, but I'm also putting on there 1 to 50, so if you want to sit down and watch 50 whole minutes worth approximately, and then look for the ones once you've watched those for 51 to 100, and then 101 to 150 and so on. That's if you can stomach me that amount of time. So to find me, all you have to do is type in Our True History Parts on YouTube. Our True History Parts, fairly simple, and you'll see all these pop up. I'm adding them as I go, so you should start seeing them when you look. Thanks. Bye. So the little greys were around after the Homo sapiens were created, and I think that's because the creatures before the Cro-Magnons and Neanderthals, etc., I don't believe they had the pineal gland, but I think after we were created, we did, and that's what the souls enter, and that's what brought the greys and their masters. And I'll talk about greys later on. There's a whole different story with them, but there's proof that their kind of craft were around throughout the centuries, right up till now, obviously. So these old paintings have, as you can see, UFOs in the backgrounds. Even craft that's got people inside them. There's a really good one there with a light beam come down. Obviously, when I get to Jesus, I'll explain about lights and how they lift people up and cattle mutilations, etc. But there's another one there that's actually having an effect on this bird. So they've been around for. So while the greys were here during the time of the Anunnaki, the greys were picking up people and doing modifications to them. Genetic ones, and that lineage. So, for example, your great blah 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 grandfather may have been selected by a grey to do an experiment on, and each generation they come back and they manipulate or check on that person. So there's a long bloodline. So if you feel like you've been abducted, chances are your parent or both parents or whatever have been, and then their parents and their parents' parents. So this started way back when the Anunnaki were here, because they do experiment with people for lots of different reasons, which I'll go into when we get to the actual greys down the line. This is a scary thought. So if the light beings are eternal, and there's this video on YouTube called Time Lapse of the Future, and basically it goes through what happens after trillions of years, trillions and trillions of years, how things bash into each other, and then black holes are formed. And basically at the end of the video, when the very last thing destroys itself because there's nothing else there, you're left with completely nothingness. And obviously if the eternal light beings are still around, that would be hell to live with nothing. There's no planets, there's nothing, just black. So I, for one, don't actually want to be a light being. Thank you very much. I'll pass on that one. So I've got some bad news, I'm afraid. You wanted to know about the Anunnaki. Well, this is a part that I didn't want to tell you, but you want to know. So the planet Nibiru is approximately, we're not 100% sure, but it's about 4 to 10 times the size of Earth. So it's a big planet, and it's on that 3,600 year elliptical orbit. Now, if you're thinking, oh, that's really weird, no other planet does that, yes, NASA has confirmed back in 2016 that there is another planet around another star that has 1,000-year orbit in an elliptical orbit. So yes, it's possible. So, but basically, as the planet comes back round, as you see there, it's close to Earth. Now, if that's the case, when it comes back round, and it's kind of fairly due, it could be next 50 years, 100 years, we're not sure. Some astronomers say that they can actually see it certain places at certain times of night, and they can see it because there's also a dead star that goes round with it. But if it does come in close like that, we're going to have floods, earthquakes. It's not going to be pretty. And in fact, if you Google underground cities by the governments, you'll see every government has made massive, absolutely humongous underground cities to protect themselves. So when this comes, they're going to be all right. We're not, unless our Earth is here, in which case we're, hopefully it doesn't affect us too much. But if you go back every 3,600 years, you'll find that there is something that's happened approximately in our history that coincides with them coming round. So you have to be prepared for this. So what normally precedes the planet Nibiru is meteorites. So we will be bombarded with meteorites because they circle round Nibiru and the dead star. I think it's a dwarf star. So it was actually a binary star system, believe it or not. We had two suns, but one died out and went on its way around that elliptical orbit. The Hopi Indians actually called the planet the Blue Planet, or the Destroyer, and they obviously called it Destroyer because when it come round it caused problems. Now there's some astronomers these days that say that certain angles in certain positions around the world, they can take pictures or videos of the Blue Planet on its way back round here. Do your own research on this. A lot of them say it's on its way and it could be here within the next 10 years. The secret military complex, which is basically a government to themselves, but they're funded by the American government. For example, 2001, Donald Rumsfeld gave a press statement and said they've lost trillions of dollars. They didn't lose it. It went to fund the secret military complex in things like building these spaceships. So this is the X-37B. And they sent up loads of these as a robotic. They're robotics, so there's no one inside. And they sent them to try and push Nibiru out of as much as possible out of the way, so it won't cause so much problems. And they used a thing called the D-Star program, which has the ability to push a planet out of the way. Now, with that, that means either the Anunnaki weren't on the planet anymore because they wouldn't want their planet nudged because of their problems they'll have with that, or we've been lied to and they didn't try and nudge it. So the two princes, the two brothers of Nibiru, Enki and Enlil, in fact Enkai Kai is the name for Earth, so it all makes sense now how we even got the planet Earth because of them. So everything that I'm sort of showing you now makes a lot more sense, I hope, than what you've read elsewhere. Now, they sometimes depicted themselves with wings, not all the time, but sometimes, and I think that's just basically a power trip saying that, hey, we can fly and you guys can't. But sometimes there's these statues have been found which look reptilian. Now, a lot of people say, well, these are the Anunnaki were reptilians because they found these kind of statues. I don't think so. Not when you look at the quality of these statues. Absolutely fantastic compared to this. So I think these are probably reptilians. Now, that's a whole nother kettle of fish. I'll get to another point. So you may remember I said that I think the Elohim were actually the name for the race. So we're humans. The instead of Anunnaki, that's what we call them. But the Elohim is what they as a race are called. And the reason why I believe that is because nowhere does it put down their race. Now they talk about everything else, but there's no mention of their race. So it makes sense that if the Elohim was the race, then it's written down everywhere. Zachariah Sitchin actually agrees with me on that.
Were the Elohim the sons of God, or were the Elohim
they were the Anunnaki, and it is their sons born on earth who married the daughters of.
So he's basically saying the same. So the race is called. Now, please watch this guy. He's passed now. His name's Zachariah Sitchin. Before his videos get taken off, watch him on YouTube. As many videos. I'm just going to move away from the Anunnaki and the spirits for a while. If you've got any questions about them, let me know, and I'll try and do videos later on. But so I'm just moving on to Bigfoots. Now, Bigfoots actually say that they are frightened that if you take a photograph of them, you will steal their soul. And eyewitnesses have actually said that they've seen Bigfoots walking with orbs. So is that a dead relative of theirs, or is it for another reason? We don't know. But Bigfoots do exist, and they crashed here on a prison ship. They crashed here around, well, before this time, because that's when the land mass between America and Russia, you could actually migrate, which they landed in America, so that explains how they're in Russia as well as America, and not in, for example, the UK, even though, believe me, people say there's Bigfoots here, there's not in the UK. So it was a prison ship that crashed. Because Bigfoot has been here for tens of thousands of years, yes, even while the Anunnaki were here, but they obviously kept themselves hidden. The Indian tribes, the various Indian tribes over that amount of time, all have spoken about Bigfoot. They called him different names in different areas that they were in, different tribes. There's just some of the names. But this, you might find this interesting. So in Nepal, there's a monastery, and they befriended a Bigfoot, or Yeti as it was called. Basically, it's the same thing, but just one that had travelled there. And when it died, they cut the scalp off and the hand. Don't ask me why not just the head or whatever. But anyway, they cut that off and they put it in a box, and they were very proud of it. Thieves stole it, and then Peter Jackson had found out about this and got his special effects company Weta to remake it so that they can put it back in their box. So it is fake, but it was from an original. Let me tell you a story about aliens and Bigfoot. So this gentleman here is called Robert Hall, and during the war he was a little child, and he used to play on the street with other friends. They saw a UFO land, a disc-shaped one, and it cloaks itself. Out comes little greys and a Bigfoot. We know that Bigfoot, from what I've mentioned in the previous video, do travel the stars. I mean, George Lucas was already pretty much gave everyone it on a plate with Chewbacca, but not many people seem to understand that him and Spielberg are very, very, very clued up on this. Anyway, so he saw this Bigfoot with the thing, with the little greys. Now, Richard D. Hall that's the guy at the top there, if you can see, does a website called richplanet.net, and it's got an interview with, he's Gary Heseltine, he's a ex-policeman who interviews people as well. But there's Robert Hall, who was interviewed by Richard D. Hall on richplanet.net, and he explains the whole procedure of what actually happened. In fact, even to a point of where a policeman got involved, and because a little grey was chasing him as a child, policeman stepped in, whacked the little grey so hard that it actually killed it, and they had to put it in a basement until the very next day when more different police turned up to take the body away. Fascinating story. Now this is where you may have heard the word little green men. Now this guy's accent in the UK is very, very strong. I think he's in a place called Gateshead, and so when he says the word little grey men, he actually comes out little green men. And the news reporters that came along to his house, when they found out what happened, wrote down little green men. So that's, that establishes why, because the greys are not green. So But after that, the Men in Black also showed up at his house. So I would suggest strongly, it's called The Gateshead Grey. Look it up on YouTube or richplanet.net. Watch his story. I found it compelling, and I totally believe, certainly why would he talk about Bigfoot and the Little Greys? There's so many other cases with Bigfoot and the Little Greys working together, coming out of their ships, etc. So go and watch it, and then come back and carry on watching mine. Thanks. Some information about Bigfoot. Some of it you may know, some of it I believe I'm the only person that sort of said some of the things. Anyway, so they range from anywhere from about 8 foot to 10 foot. Sometimes, if you're really, really lucky, 11 foot. They're reddish or dark brown or brown hair. There's not really a white one. People may say they've seen white ones, but I don't believe they have. If it was probably just covered in snow. If they're in the sort of Tibetan hills or somewhere like that, or in Russia. The Patterson-Gimlin film, I totally believe is correct from lots of reasons, because I'm also a film person, so I won't go into that, but I totally believe that's real. I believe they live underground, and I believe they pull trees down, climb underneath and pull the tree back up. That's where they hide. It's said that Bigfoot can be up to 50 times as strong as a normal man. They have red glowing eyes. They smell really, really bad. They eat fish, apples. They'll eat your candy bars. They eat deer, and now if they catch a deer, they break its legs. If there's people around, they'll break its neck to stop the animal whining. Now, if you've got a dog and you let your dog out and it comes near a Bigfoot, they will break its neck. So if you've ever got a dog and you're out in America or somewhere and you see the dog's neck's broke, chances are it was a Bigfoot. They avoid humans. They're not daft. They're absolutely, this is a space race that's travelled space, so they're actually smarter than us. They can telepathically talk to each other. They also got a verbal language, which you can Google online. They avoid us because they don't use technology, and they know that we use technology, and we can actually kill them with guns, etc. Just carrying on. So Bigfoot, basically, the ones on Earth have been left here because originally they were from a prison ship, and they over time just basically adapted here. So the other ones that fly around in UFOs do not bother with picking these ones up. However, sometimes people see the ones that are from a ship and they see them disappear, and they say, oh well, all Bigfoots can do that. No, it's because obviously those ones are still in communication with ships. The ones that's here are not. Quick story then. There was a guy that was fishing out in America, and he caught some fish, and he saw Bigfoot behind him. He thought, oh no, what do I do? He had 2 fish. He passed the fish to the Bigfoot, and the Bigfoot took them and took 1 fish off of him and handed it back to the fisherman, and then the Bigfoot walked off. They don't want confrontation. They will fight, but they don't want confrontation. I demand proof. We want proof of Bigfoot's existence, not the footprints that people possibly make up, not the testimonies that people make up, not the camera footage that people make up. There's even people that say they've been taken away in their campsite at night. But where's the dead bodies? Well, there's 430 billion birds at the moment on Earth. Now, times that by 5 over our lifetimes, but yet you don't see a dead bird. Hunters say they don't see dead lions or dead bears. It's just the way it is. But Bigfoot are smart. They bury their dead. They also live underground in caverns or under trees. In my suggestion, they make a burrow under there. There's a really good program if you want to see some testimonials. It's called Finding Jay. It's on Amazon Prime. I've watched it. It's really good, and I recommend watching that. Now, on the next one, I'm going to tell you a story about Russian Bigfoot. Let me tell you a story about this female Bigfoot in the late 1900s. She was captured and she was taken to a small town in Russia. And there's information online. Be careful, some of the mainstream like to put a spin on it. But the story goes that she had was there for a while, and the locals actually would, you know, greet her in the mornings, and, you know, she'd be paraded around and everything else. And after a while, the person that owned her allowed people to, shall we say, have relationships with her. Now that's sick, I know. So you got humans, males, and this poor female, Bigfoot. Now apparently she had a baby, and the baby is him, and so he is apparently a hybrid in Russia. So look into it yourself. It's a very fascinating story. I don't have obviously time to go into the details here, but the very next story after this video is one that shook me to the core, and I believe it, and it's scary. Frozen to death in the Dyatlov Pass, forgive my pronunciations of it, in Russia. In 1959, these, I think they were researchers, about 20-year-olds, went in Russia and was crossing the ice, you know, very remote areas, and in their diary they wrote down that they thought they were being followed. Someone took a photograph of what appears to be a Bigfoot in the background. Now all these people met a horrific ending, which is why I say it's scary. If you watch the National Geographic version, I think it was them that did the video documentary, but there are others online, possibly on Netflix, etc., and it's called the Dyatlov Pass incident. Look for them. But the way they died could have only been a Bigfoot, and it put hairs on the back of my neck when you watch it. It's just a scary, you think, oh God, poor sods. Please check it out. Absolutely check it out. Fake Bigfoots, there's a lot of them around. Be careful, because if you try and pretend you're a Bigfoot in the forest, you could get shot. People have been shooting at Bigfoots, which I wouldn't advise, mainly because they're actually, you know, a living creature, and I think it's bad to kill them, but obviously greed steps in. Now there's a guy here saying that he's got a Bigfoot. I can't be sure whether that's real or not. I haven't studied it. But then you've got other ones where people took videos of, and I mean, that one's pretty convincing. If it isn't, you know, if it's real, then well done. But what I want to show you is people fake things to debunk things. So straight away, there's two pictures here you can see, one with a deer and one with Bigfoot. Now straight away people say, well, the Bigfoot one's fake because originally they had the deer. But I'm saying, what if it was the other way around? What if that was the real one and that was the fake one, and they're trying to do it to disprove that Bigfoot's out there? So have a Bigfoot DNA, hair samples and scat. You're thinking, why hasn't this all been tested? It has, and you have to be careful here, because the places that can test it, you can't just walk down to Tesco's. The places that can test it are funded normally by bigger institutions or families with very deep pockets. There's a thing called the Rule of 13, which is 13 families pretty much rule the planet, and it's pretty much true. The Rockefeller is one of those people. And if they don't want you to know about Bigfoots, dinosaurs living up to a certain point, aliens, then when they fund these science places, and they do fund them here, then if they say to these people, do not find anything to do with Bigfoots, aliens or anything, then these people will either lose their funding or be sacked. So the Rockefellers also fund the Smithsonian. So if they don't want you to know, that's why DNA is hard. If I could ask the favour of you, no, that's not a picture of me, where it says comment, if you could comment, even if it's just a one word, sort of saying thank you or I don't like this or anything, because by commenting it gets the videos viewed more, but no comments, they seem to be only, you know, a handful of people can see them. So that would be very nice if you could. So just to let you know that, I don't know, you may already know this, but in some states in America, it's actually against the law to kill a Bigfoot. So this means that the American governments are totally aware of Bigfoot out there. And obviously, apart from the moral reasons not to kill Bigfoot, they have been known to break people's necks. And there's a police story about a couple out in the wilderness. Boyfriend's neck was broke, and they did horrific, the Bigfoots, about 5 of them, did horrific things to this woman, and she was dead. So don't go looking for them. It's probably not a good idea. Dreaming. I'd like to talk to you about dreaming because I've done extensive research. I think I'm the only one that's researched such things as why you dream. I know people out there has researched what you dream, and they can translate that. So brain temperature is one of the causes. So if your brain is hot, in other words, if you're in a hot room, that can actually cause you to dream. because your brain actually shrinks. Now, the position of how you sleep. So, for example, if your head is equal or lower to your body, in other words, if you're lying on your back, for example, and your head, there's a pillow between your neck, and you're lying on your back, then you normally have a fear dream. If you're sleeping on a hard pillow instead of a soft pillow, you tend to get vivid, fine detail dreams. If you sleep with a heavy blanket, then you'll possibly have sort of confined, trapped feeling type dreams. Also, it depends on what you've eaten in the last few days, so that will also affect it, and also oxygen. If your room, so for example, if you're in a small room and you don't open the window and you don't have your door open, then after a while you will start to dream because of the CO2 deficiency. Sleep paralysis. That's when a doctor tells you that you didn't really see these little grey aliens in your room and they didn't really paralyse you. So they say it's sleep paralysis when you're in fear. Now, that's all fine, but they use that as an excuse because Betty and Barney Hill in the 60s were the first people to actually describe a little alien grey, and their description was really only localised in the local paper. So people all around the world at that time were started to say, well, I've seen these little grey aliens. But now people say that those people had seen stuff in the TV and the movies, but back then there wasn't nothing to see these type of creatures. It wasn't really till 1987 that they became sort of mainstream with books like Communion. So the sleep paralysis works nowadays. Yes, you can use that because we've all seen what these look like, but back then, 60s and 70s, they were hardly described, but yet people did actually encounter these beings. Out-of-body experience. What is an out-of-body experience? It's different from a dream. A dream, you're localised, you don't move. Out-of-body is when your body relaxes enough that your pineal gland chemistry changes and the entity that's with you, or soul, or whatever you want to call it, can actually now leave your body. Now, that happens in a near-death experience as well as an out-of-body experience. The difference between an out-of-body experience and a near-death is as you start to regain consciousness while you're sleeping, it snaps straight back into your body. Whereas near-death, there's sometimes a few options you have. Sometimes you're told to go straight back. Sometimes you're offered the choice to carry on forward, in other words, die, and let that spirit, which is now partly you, move forward onto the next plane. If you agree to go back into your body on a near-death experience, again, it snaps straight back in, and then you'll be... Remote viewing. This is where someone can, from a distance, just by sitting in a room, get given coordinates, and then from a distance they can spy on someone else. So, for example, the military, I believe, set this up originally to spy on Russia and Germany, etc. So they would have an operative given coordinates. They wouldn't know what the coordinates were, and using their skills as a remote viewer, and you can train doing this. In fact, there's courses, I believe, in America, maybe around the world, if you want to learn remote viewing. So they write down what they see. So, for example, they're given coordinates, and they could write down and say, I see a nuclear weapon. Now that information is then passed on to the army people, who will go and verify that. So what I believe actually happens on how that works, so if you remember the other videos where I said you're part of a soul group, now that soul group, let's just say hypothetically there's 5 of you, there's more, but let's just say 5. That soul group is actually connected to an ocean. So remember I was saying it was like a drop of water. Let's just imagine it's part of an ocean. So it's the same as taking a drop of water out of an ocean. That's connected to that. So think Star Wars, think the Force. Yes, I did mention Steve Spielberg and Lucas are well clued up. I might talk about them down the line. I'm having to be a bit careful what I say because Spielberg is my idol. So the Force basically is something that connects everything, including or some people call it the source. Which connects everything, all the light energy, basically everything can go through the frequencies. So what happens is when you remote view, I believe that you tap into that force. So whatever anything is, doesn't matter, it could be in another planet, then you are tapping into your and it's not you really, it's your entity that's inside your pineal gland is the actual thing that's doing the stretching out or quantum connecting with something else in where the coordinates are. So you subconsciously write down what it is you see, in your mind's eye, which is the pineal gland or the third eye, whatever you want to call it. You write down what you see and it gets verified. So remote viewing is kind of similar to an outer body, but I think you're using everything as opposed to just your own entity. Okay, so we're on to crop circles now, and anyone that starts talking about Doug and Dave, who originally supposedly created these, I want you to wipe that right out your memory banks right now. Yes, people do create them, and yes, Doug and Dave were paid to create them by the UK. I don't want to say their name because I don't want to get banned or anything, but it's part of the establishment. Anyway, the reason why I know that Doug and Dave didn't do them is because Doug and Dave apparently done them in 1976. So that's the end of that, because Sir Patrick Moore, who is a famous astronomer, or was a famous astronomer, saw one and recounted it in 1963. That's 13 years before Doug and Dave started doing it. So straight away, they didn't do it. So how far back does the crop circles go? Well, actually, 1678. There's a record of it called the Mowing Devil. Now, this was a carving that someone had created because they couldn't figure out. It was carved in wood, actually. They couldn't figure out what was going on, and of course they thought it was a devil coming at night or during the day and creating these bloody weird things. And bearing in mind they couldn't see them in 1678. They didn't have hot air balloons, they didn't have aeroplanes, they didn't have... And to see some of these crop circles, you have to be really high. Really, really high. So if you just use logic here. So if you was inside, if back in 1678 or onwards, now bear in mind that may have been prior to that, but that's what you would see. Sometimes maybe a bit lower. So you wouldn't actually get the full, you wouldn't actually know what's going on. Now, if you're in a field in Wiltshire or in England, around that time, there was no internet. Who would you talk to? You'd just say to your local neighbour. There was no telephones back then. So that is why it's difficult to say how old they are, other than that carving. So who would you have walked to the policeman and said, someone's been vandalising my field? Not really. They wouldn't really care. So get the Doug and Dave out before I carry on. Some are man-made, some are not. Now anyway, and there's a fantastic video that Richard D. Hall from thatrichplanet.net has done on some people that claim they do all the crop circles, which is really weird because some of them are simultaneous in other countries. But anyway, go there, look for this crop circle expose, and it's fascinating to find out who's actually was paid to deliberately make these to confuse the waters, to muddy the waters. More on crop circles next video. Here's something really interesting for you. In 1991, a farmer in Germany, Grasdorf, that's the place, came across a newly formed crop circle, but where the red dots are showing, they found 3 of these discs, DVD disc-sized objects, which, as you see, actually has the same pattern as the crop circle. Now, one of these discs was pure gold. The other one was 99.9% silver, and the last one was bronze. Now, I'm not 100% sure what they're used for, and why they was even left there, but there's a thing called the Roswell stone. So just remember, this is raised here outside of the disc. There's a Roswell stone, which is this, and it's got raised image on it, and the actual image is the same as a crop circle image. Now, this stone was found in Roswell, New Mexico, and this crop circle was UK. I want to show you how media lies and how people that originally tell the truth are persuaded not to tell the truth anymore. So, back in 1996 in the UK, near Oliver Castle, a guy was walking his dog, or a young guy was walking his dog, and he had his 8mm tape camera with him, and that's not impossible because I used to walk around with my tape camera, 8mm back then. And he saw these orbs flying around this field while he was out walking his dog, and he started to record them because he thought that was really weird. And then they created a crop circle, which I'll show in a minute if you haven't already seen it. Now, people try and debunk that. Now, I remember the original story, and the original story was he then went to his local pub and started showing everyone the footage on the camera, and they were all shocked, and then word spread, the local newspaper got involved, and then bigger newspapers, and then America, in fact, got involved. And they went to special effects industry people and asked them, is this footage real? And the special effects people said yes. They looked it over and they said yes, we believe it's real. Now bear in mind, 1996, this was when Windows 95 had just come out, so you were talking about very slow computers. Now Jurassic Park was only 3 years before this, so for someone to have the ability to do what he done was remarkable with a Windows 95 computer. Editing software can do it now, obviously, but back then it couldn't. So what's interesting is this guy filmed this handheld. Now I'm going to play it. You'll see my camera wobbling, but he was wobbling as well. So right, so there's the orbs, and before you know it, these crop circles. Now this is consistent with loads of other people saying that they've seen orbs create crop circles, but obviously he was lucky enough to have this camcorder. See, so it's wobbly. See his camera work there, was all over the place. Now, debunkers on TV shows have turned around and said it was fake because, and they recreate it, but they lock the camera down. If you know anything about filming, when you lock a camera down, you have what they call a clean plate. So there would have been a crop circle with a crop field with no circle in it. They record for a minute, and then they go down, spend 2.5 hours making a crop circle, come back and press record again. And because the camera's locked in position, you can manipulate that. Yes, back in 96 you could have done that, dissolved from one to the other, so it looks like within a few seconds the crop circle was formed. But his was handheld. Match moving software or camera tracking software didn't come in till well into the 2000s. So that's genuine from that point of view. Now later on, he was. People say that he was doing it for media. Seriously, if he was doing some sort of stunt with an 8mm camera, the quality was pathetic. So he was persuaded, I believe, to change his story. So just carrying on with the video from the video last time, the guy I believe ended up working in graphics or computer editing or special effects, but obviously he was interested in it, otherwise he wouldn't have had a 8mm camera, and they weren't cheap back then, as for his age anyway. So he moved into that. So then of course debunkers turn around and say, oh well, he did that back in 96. Doesn't quite work like that. Just because he was interested in filming and everything doesn't mean that he did that back in 96. And obviously the technology for Windows 95 didn't have the technology that he had there. And as I say, experts actually watched. It wasn't just a merge. It was the actual crop got flattened in a circular motion. So but there are other footage out there of orbs flying around cornfields, so it all makes sense and it is genuine, and I don't want to hear anything different. It is genuine, and that's it. So the Roswell Rock, found in New Mexico, where the alien craft crashed in 1947. This stone, which has a raised symbol on it, which actually matches a crop circle from the UK. This guy found it while walking. Now the military would have combed that area, but because this is a rock, they've obviously missed it. Now there's a couple of properties to this. Now one is that it has the image of a crop circle in the UK, even though this was found in New Mexico. The other property is they've tried to cut through the stone and do all sorts of things, but it's really difficult to recreate that. They've tried sandblasting, different ways to recreate that raised thing, as sharp and as well defined as it is, and that people have struggled. The rock is solid. There's nothing inside the rock. They've done all sorts of scans and everything else on the rock, but it's also got right on the tip there where the actual image is. There's a magnetic force, and if you look there, it's moving the rock. So he's got a magnet, so it's magnetic. Now, my conclusion on this is that it was in the craft. It's a genuine article, and it was part of the star map. So in other words, that is there's the crop circle there. So that is either our planet and our moon, or some description for the aliens to use. And I believe they used that. There's a program called Stargate actually, and they did similar with a little grey called Thor, and he was moving these rock type things around on this glass plate, and then the ship would fly there. So basically these rocks, I've got a feeling Stargate's obviously, whoever wrote that's fairly clued up. So the rocks are literally a sat nav, or with using the magnetic. Now, as we know, magnets, we used to use magnet tapes, all sorts of things. So magnets store information. So on that rock, in that magnetized rock, there is a star chart, I believe, and that will be represented by, you know, different rocks they would be representing different areas. So this is probably our solar system or our planets, I'm not sure. Now, if we did that now, we would package it in plastic and it wouldn't last very long. So the reason why they used stone and magnets is genius, really, because that will last a lot longer than us. We like to have things that look pretty, but they don't last. Whereas if we had old VHS tapes on stone and using the magnet, they'd outlive us, thousands and thousands of years. So I believe it's genuine, and it's a star map, and that's why they used magnetics. Crop circles are a worldwide phenomenon, but they also appear in water, in snow, in leaves, in fields. These are just obviously fake ones. But the difference between a real crop circle and a fake crop circle is these nodes. These nodes get superheated by the real orbs, and they're done as a UHF microwave frequency, apparently, according to W.C. Levengood. Now, you should check his research out. He goes into a lot more detail than I can here. And the crop that's actually inside a crop circle grows 400% more than the crop outside the crop circle. And they're normally found on ley lines, crop circles, but the man-made ones are flattened and the stems are broke, whereas these are not broke. The proper ones are never broke. So that's the difference, and obviously there's energy inside which can cause batteries to die. This crop circle has brow inside there, raised dots, which makes it obviously a unique crop circle, and that was done in California. Now, it was covered extensively in newspapers at the time, but what they don't tell you is as soon as the US Army found out, they went there, they dug up the roots of this crop circle, they put them on the back of a truck, they set fire to the whole field, and then they drove off with the roots. Now, does that sound like they were worried about a man with a plank of wood? No. There's also other reports of Army helicopters, blacked out helicopters, with cameramen filming crop circles. Why would they do that if it's just a man with a plank of wood? Now, there's a guy called David Clayton, who is an ex-Royal Air Force engineer, and he claims that the MI5 pay people, that's the MI5 in the UK, pay people to fake crop circles to make sure that we all think that they're fake instead of having real ones. I'm still talking about crop circles, but I'm talking about the orbs now that create the crop circles. So I've mentioned in previous videos about the orbs or spirits or entities or drops of water, whatever you want to call it, soul that enters yourself while you're being born. Now, I think those are on a plane of existence which is low. Then if they die, or if you die, then it moves over to the next plane of existence. And then the spirit then, or the entity, whatever you want to call it, can move up different planes of existence. Now, I believe the ones that create the crop circles are the same ones that come out of physical UFO ships. And they can also split. And I'm just showing a video here just to give you an example. This may not be orbs, but orbs can actually be massive in size. So I think that basically it's an entity that's well up in the higher planes of existence compared to your spirit entity. Don't worry, this isn't what you think it is. This is me talking about the Smithsonian. Wait, don't run. because you know what I've said about them. I don't trust them because they always try and debunk things, and yes, they're doing it here with the art of the crop circle. They're saying that everyone's pretty much fake. But we know different now, because we know that they were actually way done before these people. Now, these people here, there's a video of actually Doug and Dave doing it, showing, yes, very clever that they did do that, but they do break the corn. So I've been asked, why do we not see crop circles anymore? It's because of this. Newspapers, which, you know, when you get your head around it, newspapers don't want us to know about UFO or any of the stuff that I've been talking about. So they tell us everything's fake, and therefore no one bothers reporting on the crop circles, but they're still around. Crop circles still appear every year in crop. So, you know, in the UK, so if you want to go and see one, you could pretty much time it right, and there is tours. Some farmers allow that. So there's a crop circle that was done here in Wales in 2001. And this is a reply to a message that was sent out called the Arecibo message, and that was sent out in 1974 using radio waves into space. And this is a reply. So basically, this is what we sent out, and this is the reply that we got. You see the difference there. Now, each one of these different things represents something. So obviously that's showing what the characters look like that's done this. That's showing the population of the planet. That's showing the kind of telescope or radio that would be required. So I'll just give you an idea here. This is a breakdown of what someone's done of that crop circle, which is classed as a reply to our message that we sent out into space. So if you look down here, average height of the alien with the big head is 3.4. So, you know, just under 4 foot, which would make it probably one of the Zeta Reticuli. And I'll go on about that in another video. But so this is really interesting, because it talks about their population, how many stars they've got, how many planets around their area, and what kind of telescope to talk to them back on. Now, if this was fake, it's very well done. Someone's really clued up on everything, because they even talk about what kind of, you know, we're carbon based. I think they said this was silicon based. So whoever's done this is really, really clever and knows what they're doing. If it is fake, if it's real, then the next video that I'm just about to show you is kind of a warning to us, and we might need to heed it. Thanks. This was a crop circle formed in 2002, and it shows an alien grey. Now, whoever done this, whether it's the alien greys themselves or a fake person doing it, has done it right, because see the pupil there? Actually, they do have pupils. They're just using a cover over their eyes, a bit like sunglasses, really. Now, this is a disc, and it's been found to contain binary code. So when you break the binary code down, it reads out to: beware the bearers of false gifts and their broken promises. Much pain, but still time. And then a damaged word, possibly. Believe. There is good out there. We oppose deception. Conduit closing. Bell sound. Now, I'm worried that they're actually talking about our governments. Originally, when I first knew about this, I thought it was other aliens. But thinking about everything now and what's happening, how they're lying to us, the governments, about vaccines and stuff. What is a crop circle? Please don't say it's a hoax. I've covered that. They're 400 odd years old at least, and for a man to see them, so they're not made for man or woman to see them, because you would need to be a couple of 100 feet in the air, if not 1,000 foot, and we didn't have the technology 400 years ago to see that, nor would we have the brain power to even understand what they were back then. You know, we didn't have computers or photographs properly 400 years ago, so we would have had to draw it on paper. It wasn't made for man, and they would have just done it smaller, because whoever's doing it is sentient. So if you remember, I said before that there's two types of orbs. There's the ones that go inside you, and I say orbs because that's the natural state of them, the light beings, the ones that enter you, and then there's the other types that's higher up, higher planes up. Now, what I believe is the ones that are higher up go into the ground, find out about the Earth, and report back using these to the UFOs above. Let me tell you a story, and this is a good one. So people have been abducted by aliens, and this is to do with crop circles actually, so bear with me. And while they've been abducted throughout their lives, they've been forced to learn this code, these symbols. Now these ones here are just representations of what people remember seeing on what they call an I-beam that was part of the crashed Roswell ship. So these are just from what people remember they look like off of some part of the ship. But anyway, going back to these people, so these abductees are sitting on this chair in a ship looking at a screen, and the symbols next to them would have A, that would have B, for example. I'm using this as an example, and C, and so on. And over the amount of time they've kept been abducted, they had to keep learning all the symbols, what these symbols mean. Anyway, one day, one of the, many years later, and he's now an adult, turned around to the aliens, because he's now a contactee as opposed to an abductee, and I'll explain the difference in another video. He turned around to him and said, look, why are you teaching me your these symbols and that? It's a load of rubbish. And then they showed him for about 4 or 5 seconds a few different symbols, and bang, he had read a whole book in those 3 or 4 seconds. So the speed of what you can see on symbols is quicker than us reading left to right. So what I'm saying is a crop circle, although we're just looking at it as symbols, it's probably telling a whole story about what the planet's up to, in other words, the state of our Earth around the world, which is why they're all different in different locations. So I'll just give you an example of why symbols can be better than reading left to right. So look at this. This is a way that we now could learn to read. So you get the point. So symbols could be the way of the future. So let me show you something else. Crop circles. Apparently, if you spin them, this is something I'd heard years ago. If you spin a true crop circle, you will see something miraculously happen, like a 3D image or something like that. I'll let you go and try that. This is a poor quality video, and I'm not sure if it's a true crop circle, so you have to do it with the true ones. So that's interesting. And one last thing. It's said that if you print out a copy or even have an image on your phone of a true crop circle, it will bring you good luck. I haven't actually tried it. I know, as stupid as it sounds, I should really print one out and just keep it in my wallet. But the people that have said that good fortunes come to them. So thank me and send me money if you come to it. I'm just revisiting the Dyatlov Pass incident, because people were saying that it was a stove that caught fire, which there was no evidence of fire. People decided to leave their tent to go get firewood. There was an avalanche. But right, so let me lay out the facts. Bigfoot is in Russia. The copper police officer that was investigating it at the time, Russian police officer, he's now retired, but he gave this photograph to the documentary makers, I think National Geographic or History Channel, when they were doing their documentary a couple of years back. Also, the diary said that for about a week, the students were being followed. That's what they wrote in the diary, and then they took this one picture. Now, it doesn't look to me like a person in clothes following them in the middle of nowhere. Now, the tent itself was cut from the inside. The zip was still down. It was cut from the inside, so whatever they did, they ran in a hurry. They had their night clothes on, t-shirt, no shoes. So that doesn't sound like an avalanche to me. Now let's look at how they died. So two of them died by an edge of a forest, too scared to go inside the forest, so they died of hypothermia outside the forest. Why didn't they just go back and pick up their clothes? Do you see what I'm saying there? You're in the middle of nowhere. If there was just defies belief what people think. Makes so much more sense. Now look, they all split up as well. So some of them died of physical trauma. One victim had a major skull damage, 2 had severe chest trauma, and another had a small crack on his neck. There was another that doesn't report here that had bruises on his hand consistent with smacking something, punching something. So, think of Bigfoot there. You're trying to stop Bigfoot from doing things. 4 of the bodies were found near water by a lake, which means obviously they'd split up from the others. 3 had soft tissue damage to the face. These are 9 people in total. 2 bodies were missing their eyes and 1 was missing their tongue. Apparently 1 was missing their eyebrows. Not quite sure what relevance that has. Maybe maybe they're just albino. But basically, look, it says here, compelling natural force. Yeah, really, all of them, different locations, or just put your head for a second. A Bigfoot comes, chases them down. They're trying to hit the Bigfoot. He breaks their necks, which he does. That's what Bigfoot does. It just, to me, it just, you know, and the photograph as well, and the diary, and the fact that the tent was cut inside, and there's no evidence. Yes, snow did fall. I think they found these people a few weeks later, but arguments say, oh well, you know, it was an avalanche. I don't think so. Okay, so I think this is totally fake, and I'll give you my reasons, and then hopefully you'll agree with me, and that will stop all the trolls saying it's fake because they read it on the internet. So, you know, you do a little bit of research and you find out that not everything's as it seems. So here at the bottom it says that she was the Bigfoot woman that I was talking about in a previous video, and that's her son, is really not really a Bigfoot woman, it's just an African woman. So we then follow the story. Now Channel 4 did a big piece on it, which is where probably everywhere else got it. So once they pick up on a piece, they pick it up. So there's a guy from a university in England called the University of Oxford, and his name is Professor Brian Sykes. Now, he apparently done a DNA test from a tooth from one of the Bigfoot's ancestors that we're talking about here, and he says it's she's from Africa, so that's the end of it, and blah blah blah. But anyone that knows me knows that I do a lot more digging than just so I knew this was fake, because so Brian Sykes here has actually, this is Wikipedia, he claimed that an accountant, a Florida accountant by the name of Tom Robinson, is a direct descendant of Genghis Khan. So this guy's really clever, this Brian Sykes, the professor, but turns out it was subsequently disproved. So straight away now you've got a guy that's not as good as he thought he was, and you've got people on the internet believing what he says. So straight away there's a mismatch there. But you dig a little bit deeper. Now, he worked for Oxford University. Anyone that knows me knows that I believe the Rockefellers do not want this information out there. And look, guess who funds? Wait for it. There's the Rockefeller Foundation. Wait for it. Wait for it. You're ahead of me already. Yeah. So they're funding a guy that has now turned around and said that Bigfoot isn't Bigfoot. It's an African woman, and yet the stories from the original people that was passed down and interviewed said no, it was a Bigfoot. So I'll let you lot decide whether I'm right and the Rockefellers have, you know, told this guy to go around and change it, or whether everyone else was wrong and they couldn't tell the difference between a Bigfoot and an African woman. Yeah. Hollow moon, spaceship moon, or just a real moon. So back in 1970, 2 Russians, Michael and Alexandra, and I'm not going to try and pronounce his name, forgive me, they said that because prior to 1970, NASA had done some tests, and a seismometer said that the vibration of the moon made it sound like it was hollow. In other words, it vibrated. So of course these guys then said, well, if it's hollow, then it's probably a spaceship. Now, they're not too far off, but there's a couple of problems with theirs. One, they say that the mantle or the crust around the moon is too shallow to be real. So they're saying it's a metal spaceship covered with fake dust and rocks and stuff. My problem with that is, look, it's put in. We know the moon's been here for millions of years to help the tides. Otherwise, we wouldn't be where we are now. So the moon has been here for a long time, and if they're covering, if an alien race has to cover a metal object in space because the dinosaurs are going to be looking at it thinking, that looks a bit fake. No. So we have to get the idea that it's a metal object, because certain alien races actually dig into either a meteorite or into a planet and take a lump of rock out. And this is a spaceship that went round Earth fairly recently and actually had a slightly weird trajectory, and I think it slowed down from memory. So, and that's called the Oumuamua. Forgive me for my pronunciations again. But why they do that is because they cut in just one section into a massive lump of rock. And I mean, this is huge. I think it's a mile or more long. The aliens do. And then they hollow it out, and now they've got a perfectly great spaceship that doesn't have the nuts and bolts that our spaceships had. So in other words, it's got less to go wrong with other than the one entrance. Now we'll get back to this because our American humans have actually boarded that already, and that's a whole another story, which I'll get to later on. So alien races, yes, I've also heard that alien races have picked up rocks and stuck them together to make a planet. I know it sounds really crazy. They crunch up meteorites and basically make a new planet out of it. So I personally believe that the moon is a real object with aliens inside. I don't think it's a metal object. I just think they've just hollowed it out. Whether or not they brought it here from somewhere else a long time ago, obviously no one's going to know the answer to that. But I do believe it's a real object, but have aliens inside researching and doing stuff. Life on Mars. I'll talk about sentient life on Mars on another video, but for now, life on Mars, yes, there is. We know that because NASA's actually admitted that in 1996, Earth received a meteorite that came apparently from Mars, and it has microscopic life on that meteorite. Now, there's also methane on Mars, which is caused by biological things decomposing, basically. So we've got to ask ourselves, does NASA lie to us? Well, this original picture here was one of the first pictures of Mars, and it has a blue sky, and that's what it would look like. However, a lot of people said, but you said, NASA, that the planet's red and therefore it should have a red tinge. Yeah, next thing you know is they reproduce the same image, but they put a colour filter over it, and they say, oh, sorry, it was our fault, we cocked up, it should really be red. So just before I carry on with Mars, I thought I'd let you guys know that over on the YouTube channel, which you guys had asked me to set up, I've now done a live chat, and it's on there, and I will be doing more live chats. So that's the first one there. So if you go and search Our True History Parts, if you just add the word parts, you'll find it for sure. Our True History Parts. You can watch the first live. Now, I should be doing these roughly every Monday around noon. So if you're around on TikTok, come in and say hi, and then I'll be uploading them to the YouTube channel, so you'll not be able to miss them. So feel free to come and ask questions. Okay, so face on Mars. I personally don't believe it's a real face. I think it would be very egotistical of a race to actually leave a face pointing upwards. It wouldn't have benefited Earth because we wouldn't have had the technology to even see it, let alone understand what it meant back then, because we probably had dinosaurs here. So I know there's people out there that say it's definitely genuine and everything else, but I just can't get behind that one, I'm afraid. But we do know NASA lies. I mentioned in the previous video about the sky, and then they realised that they should really pretend it's red because they don't want people to know you can actually breathe on Mars, which I'll go into later on when I catch up to modern times. So if they've lied about the atmosphere on Mars, then do they lie about such things as these are objects that people have found on the NASA photographs that get sent back, all sorts of weird objects. Now, I will do another video about how they use a place on Earth as a stand-in for Mars, and then they pretend that the photographs from that place on Earth is really Mars. So I'll cover that in the next one. But there's a hell of a lot. If you just type in strange artifacts on Mars, you'll see loads. You'll even see the subterranean levels or tubes which I'm just trying to find now, but I will cover that when I get up to modern day, because that is something that's more modern day. So there is really fascinating. There's videos out there. People's done it already, different types of videos. It's quite compelling to think that there is these objects there. I totally believe that there is objects there, because I totally believe there's life on Mars at the moment, which I'll go into on another video. So just remember, NASA, the old saying, never a straight answer. So I'll let you guys decide. Thanks. Hopefully see you on YouTube, if not on the live TikToks. NASA actually, I think, owns an island. If you can remember the name of it, please tell me. I've been searching for the last hour. I can't remember the name of it. And that's where they do their testing. It's a no-fly zone. No one's allowed near it. Now, I think a lot of their pictures that they pretend is from Mars is actually really from this island. And the reason why I say that is, for example, this here is one of the pictures they say was on Mars. And look, it's a rat of some description. And there's so many more. There's bones on there on this particular pictures that they were showing at that same time. And there's also a plank of wood, which, if it was an island, could have been washed up some time back. So I'm just saying that you know, some of these rovers might not actually be on Earth, so just bear that in mind. The next video I'm going to talk about is the life that was on proper Mars and why it was wiped out. There was life on Mars. There was water, atmosphere, green grass, nice place to be. They were more advanced than us, even as we are now, so it's possible they could have come here, but I'll talk about that later on. Now, there was a nuclear explosion which wiped out their atmosphere. There's so many evidence now that suggests that, so it's a pretty common theme now. Here I'm just using this one as an example, showing about the isotopes and the radiation. But why was there an explosion, or more than one? Well, there's three trains of thought on this from different people that apparently in the know. One is there was 2 races on the planet, and a third came along and had a fight with them and blew them up. Second one is the 2 races fought each other and blew themselves up, and the third one is one of the races accidentally set off a nuclear bomb and killed themselves. I'm not sure which one it is. I do know that there was a nuclear explosion. I believe that. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about Jesus. So you know my thoughts on God, the white-bearded person, e.g. Anunnaki, all makes sense so far if you've watched all the videos up to now, because they were white-bearded people. And we called them the Elohim, which means God, or we call it God. So yeah, that kind of makes sense. So where does Jesus fit into it? Well, Jeffrey Doherty is a Christian, or was a Christian. I'm not quite sure how he sets himself up now, but he's redone a retranslation original from the actual original writings, as opposed to the Bibles. Now, we all know the Bibles have been changed. So he's gone back to the original text to see how it actually really translates. So let me read out some passages to you. So the English Standard Version of the Bible. Now, the birth of Jesus Christ took place in this way. When his mother Mary had been betrothed to Joseph, before they came together, she was found to be with child from Holy Spirit. There's another version that you may see in a different Bible. When as his mother Mary was exposed to Joseph, before they came together, she was found with child of the Holy Spirit. And then there's different, they're all different ones. But let's just go on to actually now what he translated that as. You will be taken hold of or seized in your womb. You shall be overtaken, and the power, might, and strength of the Lord will envelop you. Okay, so that is way different from what the Bible say. So let's just break this down for a second. You'll be taken hold of or seized in your womb. Okay, that's definitely a forced issue there. So anyone that knows about alien abductions at the moment know that that's pretty similar. Now, bear in mind, Jesus supposedly had a glowing skin, same as Noah. And then it wrote, you shall be overtaken. So, you know, anyone that knows about how the aliens beam up people. with the power and might and strength of the Lord will envelop you. So anyone that knows about how people get beamed up into an alien craft, that's exactly what happens. So they're enveloped in this light. He goes on and explains a lot more, but I'm just trying to prove a point that the actual proper translations are not really nothing really what we read in the Bible. So well worth looking him up and doing your own research. Fascinating. I'm sure this one will get blocked just because. Anyway, so my feelings on Jesus is that at the time it was one of the Greys, probably the Orion type, that impregnated Mary, as they do now to people. Yes, they do. He was a hybrid and had the glowing skin, had some abilities possibly to read minds, as the aliens do themselves. And even when he was on the cross, forgive my remembering, but it was something like he looks up into the sky, looks at an object and starts saying, why are you doing this to me? Why are you leaving me here? Which kind of, people say it's heaven, but I think there was an object up in the sky, and obviously he's aware of the alien. So just another hybrid, I'm afraid. Don't hate me for this. That's what I think. Foo Fighters is a name that was given to UFOs back in the 40s. Now, it wasn't until 1945 that UFOs became really, really popular and seen a lot more. And that was because the first nuclear bomb that was exploded. Now, it's said that the nuclear bomb had tore a rip in the interdimensional space-time and allowed UFOs to come through. That's why we could see them. And the other version of that is the fact that we're now had the capability of destroying souls, as I mentioned before, and the aliens didn't want us doing that, so that's why they became a lot more interested in us. Kenneth Arnold was a pilot. He drew this, and he said he saw multiple of them in 1947. So as time moved on, the aliens got far more interested in us than what they had before, but I'll tell you more in the next video. Sometime during the Second World War, Nazis were in communication with the reptilian race. And the reptilian race you don't really want to deal with. They're probably the nastiest ones out there that I'm aware of. Now, if you remember I said about the Council of Aliens that put Earth on quarantine, that basically means that these reptilians can't come down and start giving us weapons, etc. So what they done was they pointed the Nazis, knowing that there was a war going on. They helped them find these underground bases, massive bases, in Antarctica. Now, these underground bases apparently are millions of years old by another alien race that was here at the time. So the Nazis obviously started to use that. Now, apparently, Hitler himself escaped to Antarctica in a submarine. Lots of submarines were going backwards and forwards. But the US had a trick up its sleeve. So while the Nazis were getting help from the reptilians, President Eisenhower was approached by, and I believe it was either the Pleiadians or the Nordics. They set up a rendezvous in an air base and basically said to Eisenhower, listen, we'll enlighten your species so you can all evolve. The only thing you have to do is stop the nuclear weapons and make sure the whole planet stops. Eisenhower thought about it and said, well, there's nothing in it for us, pretty much, words to that effect. Go away. Some few weeks after, another race that was waiting came down, and this is obviously a fake picture, and had another chat with Eisenhower, and this time Eisenhower agreed to the terms and conditions of their treaty that they suggested, and I'll tell you the ins and outs on the next video. The treaty between Eisenhower and the Tall Whites, that's who I think they were. I'll talk about alien races later on. The treaty goes something like this. Eisenhower or America would be given technology that will help clean up water, clean up our oceans. Nothing that would, no nuclear type weapons or anything like that. But a lot of technology that would help them. And of course, Eisenhower thought, this could help, beat Russians, beat anyone. So in return, though, the aliens are allowed to abduct people, experiment on them, wipe their memory, and put them back. And Eisenhower agreed to that as long as the aliens gave him the information on who was abducted. And that's where you get the Men in Black, which I'll talk about later on. So Eisenhower agreed to that, and that's why we're abducted.